Hello everyone, my name is Grayson and welcome to a review of Absolute Tactics, a turn-based game coming out today. It is a turn-based tactical RPG featuring your classic swords and sorcery. It has tactical combat, a cast with adjustable character classes, which is very fun, puzzle-like missions, and some seriously evil daughters of a big bad evil guy. The developers were kind enough to provide a key for me in order to make this review, so please keep that in mind. Thank you, developers. Gameplay-wise, you'll feel right at home if you enjoy tactical turn-based RPG-type games like Final Fantasy Tactics or Felseal Arbiter's Mark. Characters move around on a square-based tactical grid and fight. All allies go, then all enemies go, rather than having an initiative system. Enemies move around, lining up abilities with various AoEs. Back attacks are critical, but you may have to expose your own back in order to line them up for such a critical attack. Skills are easier to use, but are typically more situational, such as a trap or a barricade, or they do less damage. Speaking of skills, they are actually learned via a somewhat unusual method. Characters will learn innate skills that they will always have, but many skills come from your gear, primarily your class books. Characters can equip class books that give you perks such as a warrior, a guardian, or a sorcerer, or even weirder ones like entomologist, and they grant relevant abilities that use your mana-like pool of energy, called SP. Missions will have lootables and other secret objectives, such as a chest hidden away behind a door, or a ghoul with a sack of loot that if you don't kill him quick enough, he escapes. There are also sometimes missions that will take place on moving objects, like a horse-drawn cart or a train. These maps will have enemies spawning to chase after you or defend their moving location, giving the missions the illusion of a ton of energy and consequence, which is really fantastic. The most tension I felt during the game so far was during one of these missions, defending a moving cart from approaching bomb enemies that blow up a turn after death. I had absolutely no trouble with that mission, but the energy of it all had me pretty pumped. The difficulty on normal is well balanced. Most of the time I had no problems, but there were a few welcome difficulty spikes, especially if you stretch your resources thin going for extra loot hidden around corners. I am excited to try on harder difficulty. Some enemies are quite dumb and will just attack the closest thing, while others, particularly the human enemies, enjoy getting behind you for critical attacks or targeting your weakest health units with spells. In terms of graphics, the game has a lot of 3D objects that look great and feel very much like a modern take on a classic RPG, which is what I would guess the developers were going for. They say that all of their maps were handcrafted with these assets, and it definitely looks like it. There's a lot of little details thrown in, like on a farm you can see all the little tools and carts and such that the farmers would have used. Things I really appreciate are those small details that make a map feel lived in. Some of the 2D hand-drawn assets are fantastic, such as Callie, my favorite, and many of the enemies. Personally, I think the main characters are rather hit or miss in design, but that's just my personal opinion. Initially, I also found that the 2D characters looked somewhat out of place against the 3D backgrounds, almost like they were at the wrong angle or something, but I did get used to it over time and I no longer notice it as much. I'm not sure if this is something you all watching will notice, so let me know what you think about that. It could just be me. A lot of the enemy models and maps look amazing, and based on the images I've seen on Steam and in their other promotional materials, I think there's going to be a lot of really cinematic boss-type encounters to come, and I am excited to see those. I've already had a handful of those thrown my way, and they were all really fun. I have also so far found a fair bit of flashing lights and pure white loading screens, which are not welcome when I'm playing late at night. The UI for the game is fairly simple. I will say though that mission objectives are not in any sort of UI once you begin a mission, and if you can't remember what your next step is in the mission, you may be out of luck or sort of bashing your head against everything until you accidentally find it. Enemies have a visual clarity in their strengths and weaknesses, both offensively and defensively, noted below in a little bar that shows pips based on how strong they are in those categories, red for physical and this purpley blue color for skill damage. In terms of accessibility options, the game is unfortunately a little bit lacking. I am red-green colorblind, and I really appreciate when games take the time to put those options in. The enemies, of course, have your standard red health bars, and allies have green, and I would appreciate it if we had an option to flick those over to blue and red, or blue and green, or something like that. Targeting things that are underneath walls or roofs based on the positioning of the camera is quite difficult sometimes, and it can be easy to lose your cursor. Typically the maps are designed in a way that you can pretty much see everything, and there'll be a lot of nice clear area for you to actually play in. Sound-wise, the menus and combat sound effects are quite good. There's some crunch to the combat, and the skills have a basic but functional design, such as the spring-loaded metal sound of a trap being placed. Some are particularly good, like the squish of attacking a berry bush, always fun. The combat music has energy to it, which is great for keeping you going when you're in a long fight. The story of Absolute Tactics is a bit campy. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It knows that it's a fantasy RPG game. This comes through mainly in dialogue, but sometimes through item descriptions or other bits of text here and there. There are a few fourth wall breaking things, sort of tropes in there. It doesn't always end up making a ton of sense, however. For example, at one point the party meets the big bad evil guy, and he literally says, "You think you'll get out alive? This isn't that kind of story." Then he proceeds to actually just leave with one of those, "Okay, trusted right-hand man, take care of them for me." You of course escape. One of the main characters, Huxley's personality is just not that endearing for me. He acts like a dumb teenager, which he probably is, but it just doesn't do it for me. A lot of tropes are present here in this game, but in of itself, not too bad. And for a variety of things that I couldn't really fit into other sections. One is that I can't get my Xbox style controller to work on this game no matter what I do. I'm not sure what the issue is there. Callie and Arkin are badasses, and I love them. Not knowing much about the game before I started playing it, I was excited to see some inclusivity when the second character introduced was a large black man who's the captain of the guard. However, other than him, I'm not seeing much diversity. One of the ghouls is called a barfer, and that's funny. I like the camp and the freedom you have to customize your character classes and gear, but why do I have a camp? Who are these people? This has not been explained to me so far. There's some interesting things that the developers have done here with the way you can swap character classes in and out with the two books that they can carry. It leads to some very interesting designs, like having my healer character also casting fireballs, or having my trap laying character also swarm a group of enemies with stinging insects. Although I'm not 100% sure what the difference is, I did load up Huxley with a fighter and warrior skill book, so I guess he's just extra fighty. A lot of the missions in this game so far have had some really interesting and tense moments where things happen that you didn't expect, like a giant group of enemies spawn in and you think, I'm not going to be able to handle this, my units are low. And then you do. You crush your way through them and you feel awesome. When you're running up the stairs avoiding bombs or laying traps and leading dumb ghouls into them, you feel great when you succeed in that kind of thing. So for that, Absolute Tactics does a great job at being a tactical RPG. Overall, Absolute Tactics is a competent tactical RPG game. It's not a perfect game, but very few are, so if you like what you've seen so far, go ahead and check it out. If you have any questions about Absolute Tactics, go ahead and leave them for me in the comments below. I'd be happy to get to them. If you have any other games you'd like to hear me review or see me play, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, like and subscribe, all that good stuff for me. I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in my next review. Don't forget to check out Absolute Tactics. Thanks for watching.